Hey, what's up everybody? Eternal Fire here, and today we're going to be talking about the Prot Warrior in patch 7.2. In this video, we're going to be looking at the stat priorities, artifact weapon, talent builds. We're also going to take a look at legendaries and how to use them with different talent builds, and then we're going to take a look at the rotation for those builds as well. With that said, let's look at the stat priorities first. The main stat you want to go for is haste. You want to have haste as close to 30% as possible. As you can see, this is pretty low. It's only at 23%, but with Nighthold tier gear, it's pretty hard to get the haste that you need. So there are some ways you can get there, but unless you get a few choice pieces of gear, it's difficult to get to 30%. And I've seen a lot of other high-end Prot warriors are not quite at 30%. We typically float in the mid-20s, but do the best that you can. And then you want to focus on mastery next. Mastery is just really powerful, and especially with some of the other things you have, like your 4-piece, you gain 20% increased chance to critically block while shield block is active, and then your critical block generates 5 rage. I would say that's pretty significant. So your mastery only increases your blocking. So overall, it just makes that whole area of shield block being up even more essential. So haste, mastery, versatility comes next, and it's a close second to mastery, and then lastly critical strike. The main thing you want to be critting on is your shield slams, but when we look at the artifact, Shatter the Bones right here increases the critical strike chance of shield slam by 20% during shield block. So I have 3 traits just from this, and then I have a relic that buffs it as well. So that is, in my opinion, one of the most important things if you're looking to increase damage output. And the other one to increase damage output would be the Rage of the Fallen or Thunder Crash relics. For survivability, we would be talking about, Dragon Skin, Rykul, shield training, or even toughness. So those are the kind of relics you want to go for either damage output or survivability. You also in 7.2 have this new thing here, this new group of traits. You start with this one, and it was actually kind of nice because I was confused as to why I spent all this time getting 54 traits to get up to 29% increased armor, and then it dropped me down to 10, but then you see the very first talent or trait that you get, it increases your armor by 20. So what it actually did is it increased your armor by 1% when you got your essentially 55th trait. It also increases damage done by 10 and stamina by 10%, so that's really nice. So then you're just going to work your way down here, and you're gonna come all the way around here until you get this gold trait. Thunderclap now applies Neltharion's Thunder, reducing your damage taken from the target by 1%, stacking up to 5 times. Now I don't know if this is on a timer, so say you Thunderclap a boss 5 times and then you don't Thunderclap again. Is it like active for 10 seconds and you need to reapply it, or does it just stay on that target? I don't know. I haven't gotten there, so we'll find out. If anybody does know, please let me know. It's interesting. Either way, we'll find out soon enough. As far as the convergence traits go, it is going to be important to, be putting points into that. However, I think it's going to be more beneficial to fill out these, because you're going to look at your old traits and a lot of them have an extra, instead of 3 out of 3, it's now 3 out of 4. So they added an additional, trait to the trait, level to the trait, whatever you want to call it. And just having increased Shatter the Bones, increased damage on Revenge and Thunderclap, increased Ignore Pain, you just can't go wrong. It's just get those, before you start dumping all your artifact power into Neltharion's Thunder. So that's something that you want to do. So that is the stat priority and the artifact weapon in a nutshell. The trinkets I run with is Infernal Contract off Gul'dan, and then Animated Exoskeleton off Scorpyron. They're just very nice. Damage absorption in a pinch, you can pop that and fill your health bar, and this is just a really nice damage absorption. I recommend these 2 trinkets. I think they're very good. There's a lot of decent trinkets in Nighthold, however, and based on the class you play, I think there's a lot of different options that are very decent. So in this case, we're talking about Prot Warriors. So these are the ones I like because it's all about damage absorption and mitigation. So let's talk about legendaries real quick. I don't have the gloves, and that really frustrates me. Because I'm all about damage output as a Prot Warrior. That's really what I focus a lot of time on. with the build I use, and we'll talk about that, I feel like the more damage you put out, honestly, the more ignore pain you have. So I don't have the gloves. I'm frustrated. I wish I did, but I don't. So we're going to talk about some other things. If you do have the gloves, you're definitely going to want to be using those. They're pretty, I think in my opinion, they're the most powerful Prot Warrior legendary. So right now, as kind of a general, I run with Safuz's Secret and Manaroth's Bloodletting Manacles. But you also have the Thunder God's Vigor, which got buffed. Each time you hit with Thunderclap, reduces the remaining cooldown on Demoralizing Shout by 3 seconds. It used to be 1, and they added, they basically tripled the cooldown reduction on Demoralizing Shout. You also have the Agrimar's Stride, which is just a utility. We all know what that is. And Safuz's Secret, I like this for Prot because not only does it give you 1068 haste on the ring now, but it also increases your movement speed by 10% and your haste by 2%. So you're getting that 1068 haste on top of a 2% bonus. So I was able to move some gear around just because of that, increased haste there, and get a couple other pieces, that had haste, but I wanted to replace them. So, Safuz's Secret, I think, is very effective. Not to mention, when you intercept now, you are always proc. If Safuz's Secret is available and the target is rootable, then you're always going to be proccing Safuz's Secret basically every 30 seconds and getting a really nice haste buff. So I recommend this for Mythic Plus dungeons or boss fights where you are able to, be, interrupt ads or interrupt the boss or whatever. If the boss is not interruptible, it's a single target situation, I would go with the Thunder God's Vigor, because you just can always have benefit from having Demoralizing Shout up sooner. So let's take a look at the talent builds now. I really like what they've done with the talent builds. I feel like there's a lot of different routes you can go, and based on the situation you're in, different talent builds for different people is not necessarily a bad thing. So first we have Shockwave and Warbringer. Shockwave is good for Mythic Plus or bosses with ads where you can stun them. Warbringer is good in situations like a single target boss. You're just going to be putting out a little more damage every time you intercept. And then we're going to drop down here. Impending Victory is really good for, say, questing out in the world to get that heal when you want it. Inspiring Presence is my go-to for raiding, and then you can also use Safeguard, and that would be like a very particular situation where you need to help somebody mitigate some damage. So, it would probably be on the other tank in your raid. Then we're going to drop down here, and you have Avatar. This is my go-to for damage because I basically get a 20% damage increase, and I get to decide when it's used. Whereas the other two are passive, and Renewed Fury, every time you use your Ignore Pain, you deal 10% damage. So if you're in a situation where you're, let's say, Vengeance Weaving, and you have Ignore Pain up all the time, overall, that's going to be a very good damage increase. Best Served Cold is probably good if you're like just mass AoE pulling throughout an entire Mythic Plus dungeon. You might get some really beneficial DPS out from that. And then Avatar again, that's my go-to. Bounding Stride is the best in this tier. They nerfed Crackling Thunder. It's only 50%. I really don't feel like it's necessary, especially with the way Revenge and Thunderclap are up so frequently. Bounding Stride just adds some really nice mobility. And then we drop down here, and this is the most controversial tier. I've made a video about it before, so I won't go in too much detail. But I do want to talk about them a little bit since we're doing a formal guide here. You have Devastator and Indomitable. Never Surrender, I don't think I've seen anybody take. With Devastator, it replaces Devastate and becomes your auto attack. So now your auto attacks generate 5 rage, do a lot more damage, and have a 30% chance of resetting the cooldown on Shield Slam, as do Revenge and Thunderclap. So keep that in mind. Basically, when you run with Devastator, you want to use your Revenge and Thunderclap while keeping in mind your swing timer for your auto attacks, right? So I have a weak aura right here where you see my mouse, and that basically, when I get into combat, it tracks my swing timer. So if that's about to expire and I'm about to use a white hit, I might save using Revenge to see if my white hit procs Shield Slam, because if it procs Shield Slam, I'm going to use that Shield Slam and then Revenge and have another 30% chance to proc another shield slam. You basically don't want to be overlapping your chances to proc shield slam, or you might as well just go with Indomitable. Devastator generates more rage and does more damage than Indomitable. And in my opinion, and this is only my opinion, I think it's a much more fun play style. It takes the unfun, spammy feeling out of the Prot Warrior rotation that was Devastate. So then you also have Devastate. It increases your maximum health by 25% and increases the maximum effect of Ignore Pain by 25%, which is really, really effective. There are such situations where you could certainly swap to this and it would be appropriate. Again, in my case, I prefer increased damage output. I find in the content that I do, and I was doing Mythic plus 15 and I do Heroic rating. I don't really go for Mythic rating. I just don't think it's worth my time. Especially with the way Titan Forging works these days. It's just, why kill yourself? I've used Devastator for all of that content, and it's been perfectly fine. So if people are thinking that 25% maximum health reduction by taking Devastator is detrimental, I don't think it is. It's based on how you play your warrior. So then we're going to drop down here, and you have Vengeance, Into the Fray, Booming Voice. With Vengeance, you are going to be alternating Ignore Pain with Revenge now. Basically, they took out the Focus Rage, and Focus Rage became Revenge, which I actually like because Focus Rage was an additional button to hit that just buffed your Shield Slam. And if you were weaving, you were just using it to alternate your Ignore Pains to get cheaper Ignore Pain. But now, you're having Revenge proc all the time from dodge and parry, and it doesn't reset the cooldown, but it makes your next Revenge when it comes off cooldown free. So, you want to just alternate between Revenge and Ignore Pain. At this point, that's a pretty basic understanding with warriors. It does take practice if you're new to it, so I just recommend, every other use Ignore Pain, and then you use Revenge before you use Ignore Pain again, and that's the way you're going to get the rage cost reduction effectively for this. And then you have Into the Fray, that's probably the weakest of the three. And then Booming Voice. Booming Voice is Demoralizing Shout, generates 60 rage and increases the damage you deal to targets while it's active by 25%. So Avatar and Booming Voice coupled together with Battle Cry is a pretty insane damage increase. So if you're going to go with that build, you're going to want to use this, and you're going to want to use Anger Management, okay? So Anger Management reduces the cooldown, every 10 rage you spend reduces the remaining cooldown on Battlecry, Last Stand, Shield Wall, Demoralizing Shout by 1 second. And you would be amazed at how fast these things come off cooldown when you run with that. So you're going to have your survivability cooldowns up frequently, and you're also going to have Battlecry up frequently. This is a really good, if you're not worried about taking too much damage or whatever, this is a very good build to use. It's a lot of fun because you're going to be doing some insane damage. So this is my DPS build right here, my strong DPS. If I'm doing, regular content that I'm not worried about, mitigating too much because I'm very comfortable tanking it, this is what I might run for that extra damage increase, and you're going to have it up much more frequently with Booming Voice coming off cooldown and Battle Cry coming off cooldown faster with Anger Management. And this is a situation where you definitely want to use Thunder God's Vigor because you're using Anger Management and you link that with Thunder God's Vigor, which is just going to literally make Thunderclap reduce the cooldown of Demoralizing Shout. You are going to have that ability up constantly, especially with the buff that they implemented. So Anger Management and Thunder God's Vigor, those two things, if you go with Anger Management, go with Thunder God's Vigor. It's just going to make it all the better. If you're not using Thunder God's Vigor or you don't have it, it's still fine using this build. It's just even more beneficial with that legendary. So what I typically run, though, is Vengeance and then Heavy Repercussions, which when you use Heavy Repercussions, your Shield Slam extends the duration of Shield Block by 1 second and increases the damage of Shield Slam by an additional 30% because Shield Block already increases when active. It increases the damage of your Shield Block by 30%. So it's a total of 60%. And Ravager is just pretty weak at this point. So those are the two really, in my opinion, the two really big builds. You can have that damage build where you go Anger Management, Booming Voice, or you can go with Vengeance. And then because you're getting so many Shield Slam procs, I just recommend you go with Heavy Repercussions for the greatest damage output and mitigation. So that's the talent build. And so the Prot Warrior, other than the fact that focus rage is gone, it's not too much different. You want to keep shield block up as much as you can. You want to, if you're using vengeance, you want to vengeance weave with revenge and ignore pain. And then you want to be using thunderclap on cooldown, and you want to be using revenge on cooldown, and shield slam is your top priority. But the thing about revenge you want to keep in mind is that when you are using revenge, are you in a situation where you need to be saving your rage to use an ignore pain, or are you not really worried about the mitigation because it's, you know, farm content or just a low level mythic plus? If that's the case, just spam the crap out of revenge. But one of the biggest downfalls that warriors can have is by using revenge just because it's available, and now they have no rage for that incoming damage that they really need to have a full ignore pain for. It can really help if you vengeance weave, but that's one of the biggest things. You cannot let yourself go dry just because on rage, just because revenge is available. So that's where planning comes in. Your shield slam and your thunderclap use generate rage, so you know you can always use those on cooldown. Priority is on shield slam with shield block up, because that just buffs your shield slam. Another buff that happened or is happening here, when your spell reflect, it's on a 25-second cooldown. It reflects spells cast on you and reduces magical damage you take by 30% last 5 seconds. When you get this trait here, it's an additional 20%. So it'll be a 50% damage reduction for 5 seconds on a 25-second cooldown. Used correctly, you can get a lot of benefit from doing so. So guys, that is the Prot Warrior. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, comment, subscribe. Any questions, please leave a comment. I really like having conversations with my watchers, my viewers. That's the word. We're going to be making more content again. I didn't have a chance to make a lot of content in the last 2 months. I was focused on school. So if you have any questions, please hit me up. Please like, please comment, please subscribe. And thanks for watching. I will see you on the next one.